A cinematic wide shot of rugged Macedonian mountains at dawn, golden sunlight breaking through the clouds. Cut to the royal palace of Pella, where a baby is gently held by Queen Olympias. Transition to scenes of young Alexander running through palace courtyards, learning with scrolls and swords. Slow-motion shots of him taming a wild horse, his determined eyes filled with ambition. The visuals fade into a silhouette of a young boy standing on a hilltop, gazing toward the vast horizon, symbolizing the destiny that awaits him. Before Alexander's birth, the Greek world was a collection of city-states, each with its own identity, culture, and rivalries. Athens was known for philosophy and democracy, while Sparta symbolized discipline and military power. Beyond these powerful states lay Macedonia, a kingdom in the north often seen as less refined, yet ambitious. It was here, in this land of mountains and warriors, that Alexander would be born. This world of competing ideas, armies, and empires created the stage for a young prince who would later rise to change history forever. In 356 BCE, in the city of Pella, the capital of Macedonia, a child was born to King Philip II and Queen Olympias. He was named Alexander. Legends say that on the night of his birth, strange signs appeared in the sky, and oracles predicted that this child would be destined for greatness. While myths surrounded his arrival, the reality was that Alexander was born into a powerful royal family with enormous expectations placed upon him. From the very beginning, his life was tied to ambition, destiny, and the promise of conquest. From his earliest years, Alexander was trained as both a warrior and a leader. He learned to ride horses, use weapons, and command men in battle. One famous story tells of a wild horse that no one could control. Young Alexander noticed the animal was afraid of its own shadow. With patience and skill, he tamed it. This horse, named Bucephalus, would remain his companion for most of his life. Such moments revealed not just courage, but also intelligence and the ability to understand others, even animals. One of the most important influences on Alexander's mind was the philosopher Aristotle. From him, Alexander learned about philosophy, science, medicine, and politics. Aristotle introduced him to Homer's epics, planting in Alexander a lifelong admiration for Achilles, the hero of the Iliad. These lessons shaped his vision of leadership, empire, and human ambition. Knowledge and wisdom were not separate from war. For Alexander, they became guiding forces that helped him dream of a world united under one rule. Alexander's father, King Philip II, was a brilliant military commander who transformed Macedonia into a regional power. Philip trained his son in strategy and exposed him to real battles from a young age. For Alexander, this was more than education, it was preparation for leadership. He admired his father's skill but also longed to surpass him. Their relationship was a mixture of respect, rivalry, and ambition, shaping Alexander into a leader determined to go further than his father ever could. Even before becoming king, Alexander proved his courage on the battlefield. As a teenager, he was given command of cavalry units and showed remarkable skill. His ability to inspire troops and lead with confidence made him stand out. While most young princes spent their youth in comfort, Alexander grew up facing danger, learning discipline, and earning the loyalty of his men. These early victories were the foundation of the legend he would later become. Alexander's mother, Olympias, played a powerful role in shaping his beliefs. She told him that he was not an ordinary child, but one chosen by the gods. Olympias claimed that Alexander was descended from heroes and perhaps even a son of Zeus himself. Whether these stories were true or not, they filled Alexander with a sense of destiny. He grew up believing that his life was meant for greatness, a conviction that guided every choice he made. By his teenage years, Alexander was already dreaming of empire. Inspired by Homer's heroes and his father's conquests, he imagined pushing beyond Greece into unknown lands. His ambitions were not limited to defending Macedonia, he wanted to rule the known world. These dreams, combined with his education and training, planted the seeds of the campaigns that would soon reshape history. In 336 BCE, tragedy struck Macedonia. King Philip II was assassinated during a grand ceremony. With his death, Alexander, only 20 years old, inherited the throne. The sudden change brought both danger and opportunity. Rivals questioned his strength, and enemies thought the kingdom would fall apart. But Alexander was ready. The moment had come for him to prove that he was not just his father's son, but a leader destined for glory. At the age of 20, Alexander became king of Macedonia. The throne was heavy with expectations, but Alexander carried it with confidence. He quickly moved to secure his power, crushing rebellions and showing strength to both allies and enemies. The young king was not content with ruling Macedonia alone. For him, the crown was not the end, but the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond Greece, into the pages of legend. In 334 BCE, Alexander, the young king of Macedon, stood at the helm of a united Greece, his eyes set on the vast Persian Empire. With unmatched ambition, he launched his campaign into Asia Minor, leading his disciplined army across the Hellespont. His strategic genius shone as he outmaneuvered Persian satraps, capturing key cities like Sardis and Ephesus. Each victory fueled his legend, as the Macedonian king carved a path toward greatness. At the Granicus River, Alexander faced the Persian forces head-on in 334 BCE. With daring tactics, he led a cavalry charge across the river, breaking the enemy lines. The battle was fierce, swords clashing under the blazing sun. Alexander's courage inspired his men, and their victory shattered Persian resistance, opening Asia Minor to Macedonian conquest. As Alexander swept through Asia Minor, his army moved like a storm. City after city fell, Halicarnassus, Miletus, and more. He freed Greek cities from Persian rule, earning loyalty through diplomacy as much as force. His name became a whisper of awe and fear, a young king whose ambition knew no bounds, marching ever eastward. As Alexander swept through Asia Minor, his army moved like a storm. City after city fell, Halicarnassus, Miletus, and more. He freed Greek cities from Persian rule, earning loyalty through diplomacy as much as force. His name became a whisper of awe and fear, a young king whose ambition knew no bounds, marching ever eastward. In 332 BCE, Alexander entered Egypt, welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule. The Egyptians crowned him pharaoh, and he embraced their traditions. On the Mediterranean coast, he founded Alexandria, a city destined to shine as a center of learning and culture, blending Greek and Egyptian worlds, a testament to his boundless vision. In 331 BCE, the plains of Gaugamela witnessed Alexander's greatest triumph. Facing Darius III's massive army, he executed a flawless strategy, piercing the Persian center with his cavalry. As Darius fled once more, his empire crumbled. The victory at Gaugamela marked the end of Persian dominion, crowning Alexander the ruler of a vast empire. Alexander marched into Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the glittering capitals of Persia. Babylon's splendor, Susa's riches, and Persepolis' majesty fell before him. The wealth of empires filled his coffers, but Persepolis, the heart of Persian power, was set ablaze, a symbol of Alexander's dominance and the end of an era. With Persia at his feet, Alexander's gaze turned eastward, his ambition boundless. Through rugged mountains and scorching deserts, he led his weary army toward distant lands. India beckoned. The challenges grew, yet his determination burned brighter, driven by a dream to conquer the world, a dream that knew no limits. Alexander and his army marched into the harsh landscapes of Afghanistan. The snow-covered peaks loomed above, and the narrow passes tested their strength. Soldiers endured icy winds and rough terrain, while local tribes observed from high cliffs. This was not just a march through land, but a trial of endurance and will. The Afghan climate was unforgiving. Soldiers lit fires at night to keep warm, but local tribes attacked with sudden ambushes. Arrows pierced the darkness, testing their morale. Alexander remained steadfast, assuring his men that these trials were only temporary, and glory lay ahead. Crossing the Hindu Kush was among the greatest challenges. Soldiers slipped on snow, horses staggered, and elephants struggled to climb. Yet, Alexander's leadership kept the army united. Here, nature itself tested the limits of human strength. After crossing the Hindu Kush, the soldiers caught their first glimpse of the fertile Indus valleys. Rivers sparkled under the sun, and the lush plains seemed like a promise of reward after hardship. For the weary army, this was a vision of hope. As Alexander entered the Indus Valley, he encountered diverse local rulers. Some offered gifts and allegiance, while others fortified their cities, preparing for resistance. This was the political reality of the land, where power dictated loyalty. Alexander relied not only on his sword but also on diplomacy. Many local states were bound to him through treaties and alliances. His strategy was to divide potential enemies so that no united force could rise against him. Alexander made the Indus River the main route of his campaign. Soldiers lined up on ships, while local armies gathered on the banks to resist. These river battles were new to Alexander, but they became crucial to his conquest. In Sind, several states chose resistance over surrender. Local warriors fought with unmatched bravery, defending their land at all costs. These clashes proved that Alexander's path was not one of easy victories everywhere. As the Greeks entered the towns and markets of India, they discovered a new world. The presence of majestic elephants, the aroma of spices, and the vibrant colors of fabrics astonished them. This was not just a military campaign but a cultural encounter. On the banks of the Jhelum River, a decisive moment approached. Raja Porus stood across the river with his mighty army and war elephants. Alexander's soldiers prepared for battle, aware that this clash could change the course of history. As Alexander entered the Sind Valley, he encountered a new world full of color and diversity. The valley was fertile, watered by the Indus River, and dotted with villages, farmers, and bustling markets. His soldiers, weary from the difficult journey, found relief in the abundance of resources. Yet the locals viewed this foreign army with suspicion, as they had never seen men dressed in bronze armor, carrying long spears, and led by a young king who claimed to be a son of the gods. In the Sind and Punjab regions, Alexander faced both friendship and hostility. Some rulers, calculating the power of his army, quickly allied with him, offering gifts of gold, elephants, and soldiers. But others, proud and independent, refused to bow before a foreign conqueror. For Alexander, every alliance was a step forward, but every refusal meant another battle, another test of his will. At Multan, resistance was fierce. The fortress was strong, and its defenders fought with unmatched courage. Alexander himself led the attack, climbing the walls under a hail of arrows. In the heat of battle, he was struck by an arrow to the chest. For a moment, his men feared their king had fallen. But Alexander, bleeding and weak, raised his hand to show he still lived. His bravery inspired the soldiers to storm the walls and claim victory. The greatest challenge came at the river Jhelum, where King Porus stood ready with his mighty army. War elephants towered above men and horses, striking fear into Alexander's troops. The battle was brutal, with cavalry charges, elephant rampages, and fierce hand-to-hand combat. But Alexander's strategy and determination turned the tide. When Porus was captured, Alexander asked how he wished to be treated. The proud king replied, like a king. Alexander, impressed by his courage, honored him and restored his throne. After the victory over Porus, Alexander wished to push further east, towards the Ganges and beyond. But his men were exhausted. They had marched thousands of miles, faced endless battles, strange lands, and unbearable weather. At the banks of the Beas River, the soldiers refused to go any further. Their longing for home, for rest, was stronger than the will of their king. For the first time, Alexander faced a defeat not on the battlefield, but in the hearts of his own men. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed to return. He understood that a king, no matter how great, could not march without the loyalty of his men. The decision was heavy on his heart, for he dreamed of conquering the entire world. Yet he disguised his disappointment with honor, declaring that their journey had achieved glory unmatched in history. The soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted by the promise of home. The return through the harsh deserts of Makran was a nightmare. The army, deprived of food and water, suffered terribly. Men collapsed in the burning sand, while others carried their wounded comrades. Alexander shared in their suffering, walking beside them, refusing comfort until his men had it. Yet thousands perished, and the march became one of the darkest chapters of his campaign. When Alexander finally reached Babylon, the city welcomed him as a hero. But behind the cheers lay the silence of loss. His army was no longer the same. The scars of war and the memory of fallen comrades weighed heavily on their hearts. For Alexander, Babylon was not just a city of triumph, but also a reminder of the cost of ambition. In Babylon, Alexander fell gravely ill. Some believed it was a fever, others whispered of poison. As he lay weak, unable to speak clearly, his generals gathered around his bed. The man who once seemed invincible was now fragile, his life slipping away. Yet his spirit, his aura of greatness, remained until his final breath. On that fateful day in 323 BCE, Alexander the Great died at the age of 32. His sudden death left the world in shock. The empire he had carved from Greece to India stood leaderless, its future uncertain. Yet his legacy lived on. His vision of a connected world, his courage, and his conquests ensured that his name would echo through history as one of the greatest figures the world had ever known.